Many great leaders throughout history used compassion, hard work, and valuing the individual as their guiding principles. Unfortunately, many others preyed on the vulnerable and used fear and incredible violence as tools to seize and maintain power. In no particular order, here are 9 of the most cruel leaders of all time. Queen Mary I of England did not earn her nickname Bloody Mary from ordering a few too many drinks at brunch, although living under her rule would definitely give you the Sunday scaries. Mary had a storybook childhood, in the sense that she had an evil stepmother, Anne Boleyn, who was so cruel that Mary was afraid she was going to have her executed. But Mary survived long enough to ascend to the throne in 1553 to become the first woman to rule England in her own right. She earned her nickname because of her attempts to undo recent Protestant reforms and push England's official church fully into the fold of Catholicism. At the time, the accepted punishment for heresy was burning at the stake. And during her 5-year reign, Mary was a stickler for the rules, ordering the immolation of nearly 300 religious dissenters. Idi Amin was known as the Butcher of Uganda. His reign as leader of Uganda was brief but terrible, marked by ruthless cunning and calculated terror. His singular goal was to maintain his power by imposing fear. He formed private death squads with the chillingly ironic names of the State Research Bureau and Public Safety Unit, which terrorized Ugandans from anonymous farmers, clerks, students, and shopkeepers to prominent judges, educators, and diplomats. The number of people killed under his regime is estimated at 300,000. In 1979, he was exiled and fled to Saudi Arabia, where he lived the rest of his days in hiding. Amir Timur, nicknamed Tamerlane, is remembered as one of the world's greatest and most brutal military tacticians, drawing inspiration from his idol and distant relative, Genghis Khan. From 1370 to 1405, he led military campaigns through modern-day Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria with such ferociousness, it would bring a tear to Genghis's face. He once repressed an uprising by completely massacring a Persian city and building towers out of the 70,000 skulls of its citizens. Another time, he had a tower constructed by stacking live men on top of each other and sealing them together with bricks and mortar. Historians estimate that Timur was responsible for some 17 million deaths. The leaders on this list litter the history books with their evil deeds. But there is only one with the distinction of being name-dropped in the Bible. In 605 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar II succeeded his father and grew to be known as one of the greatest kings of ancient Babylon. He was respected as a warrior king, leading his armies into battle, and he grew the city of Babylon into the crown jewel of the empire as a center for arts and intellectual pursuits and the location of one of the wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens. But in a rare instance, this history was written by the losers, in this case, the Jewish people. The Babylonian exile, Nebuchadnezzar's expulsion of the Jews from the kingdom of Judah, and the destruction of their sacred temple in Jerusalem is chronicled in detail in the book of Daniel. This book also describes him as an enemy of God and tells the story of the time he threw 3 Hebrew men into a furnace when they refused to worship a giant golden statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. Luckily, God saved their lives, in the story at least. Vlad the Impaler didn't just go down in the history books as a brutal ruler, he also inspired a best-selling novel. Nicknamed Dracula, or Son of Dragon, Vlad the Impaler had a reputation for, you guessed it, impaling his enemies and dipping his bread in their blood. Vlad became the ruler of Wallachia in present-day Romania on 3 separate occasions, clinging to the throne through torture, mutilation, and mass murder. Victims were disemboweled, beheaded, and skinned or boiled alive. His forces poisoned wells, burned crops, and paid diseased men to infiltrate the enemy to pass along their pestilence. It's believed he is responsible for the deaths of around 80,000 people. Historians consider Pol Pot to be one of the most barbaric and murderous leaders in recent history. Pol was the secretary of the Khmer Rouge Communist Party, which incited a civil war in Cambodia in 1968. By the time the war was over and Khmer Rouge had seized control of the country, 500,000 Cambodian citizens had died. But it was only the beginning. Pol Pot's goal was to enforce a radical brand of communism aimed at creating a classless society. After taking power, Pol Pot ordered the city of Phnom Penh's 2.5 million residents to be evacuated. Civil servants, doctors, teachers, and other professionals were stripped of their possessions and forced to work in the fields as part of a so-called re-education process. Anyone who resisted or broke the rules were sent to detention camps. The S-21 detention center was unimaginably horrible. As few as 12 out of the 20,000 people sent there survived. During this time, the majority of the bodies were dumped in mass graves called killing fields. It is estimated that from 1975 to 1979, under the leadership of Pol Pot, the government caused the deaths of more than 1 million people from forced labor, starvation, disease, torture, or execution in what is now called the Cambodian Genocide. This next figure is recognized with a single name that is synonymous with evil. Hitler was a lowly German corporal in World War I, but was humiliated and outraged at the penalties Germany faced from the Treaty of Versailles. In response, he helped start the German Workers' Party, the precursor to the Nazi Party. Soon after being appointed Chancellor, Hitler suspended many civil liberties, including freedom of press, freedom of expression, and the right to hold public assemblies, and police were authorized to detain citizens without cause. He transformed Germany into a war state, intent on conquering Europe for the benefit of the so-called Aryan race. His invasion of Poland triggered the start of World War II. During the war, Nazi military forces rounded up and executed some 17 million victims they considered inferior or undesirable, including Jews, Slavs, homosexuals, and Jehovah's Witnesses. He told a Munich audience in 1922, "There are only two possibilities, either victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jew." He maintained power until his death by suicide in April 1945. Joseph Stalin was the Russian understudy who became the lead actor. He participated in the Russian Revolution in 1917 and served under Vladimir Lenin until Lenin's death in 1924. At which point Stalin seized full dictatorial control of the USSR and held it until his death in 1953. His actions and policies were truly heartless, and he had zero tolerance for opposition. During a period called the Great Terror, he purged the Communist Party and army of anyone who might oppose him. Over half of his Central Committee members, generals, and admirals were executed. Average citizens were also encouraged to inform on one another. 18 million people were accused of opposing communism or petty crimes and sent to the gulags, or Siberian labor camps. Stalin was also responsible for one of the worst man-made famines in human history by implementing collectivization, grouping of farms to be owned by the state. About 5 million people died, and landowners who opposed giving up their land were executed or imprisoned. He was cruel on a mass scale, all the way down to the individual. In World War II, his son, a lieutenant in the Red Army, was captured by the Germans. They proposed to free him in a prisoner swap for a field marshal, but Stalin refused, saying Soviet soldiers who allowed themselves to be captured should be considered traitors. In total, historians estimate around 20 million people died during his reign. Genghis Khan reigned over the Mongol Empire from 1206 to 1227. At its peak, it stretched across 9 million square miles, roughly the size of North America, and the largest contiguous empire in world history. Genghis was so ruthless in his plundering that a 13th century European historian described his army as the detestable nation of Satan that poured out like devils. But his reign was complex, and he also ushered in some positive changes. He forbade the selling and kidnapping of women, banned torture and the enslavement of any Mongol, ordered the adoption of a writing system, and allowed freedom of religion. On the other hand, he killed all conquered aristocrats and resisting soldiers, and used the unskilled workers as human shields during his next assault. All in all, some historians estimate that 40 million people were killed during the Mongol conquests. History is riddled with examples of evil figures for whom no injustice is too atrocious when power is the end game. We must learn from what these people did and recognize how they did it. in order to prevent it from happening in the future.